Welcome to the Cow Corporation's series of videos about software engineering. The topic of this video is converting data from a number into a string. Before proceeding, make sure that you have already watched these other videos first. This printf function outputs its string into an operating system stream called the standard output stream. If your application is being run within a console window, then that console window will now display this output text. This output string may contain any number of substitution placeholders. A substitution placeholder is programmed as a % symbol followed by a letter that indicates a data type. The D here indicates that an integer will eventually appear. Each substitution placeholder must correspond to one parameter that's also being passed to the printf function. The first occurrence of a substitution placeholder will correspond to the first parameter after the output text, which is 11 in this example. The next occurrence of a substitution placeholder will correspond to the next parameter, which is 22 in this example, and so on. Instead of actually outputting those % and D characters, they are replaced by a textualization of the value of the corresponding parameter. Use substitution placeholder type %s if the corresponding parameter will be an ordinary C string, or use %c if the parameter will be a single ASCII character. The operating system's standard output stream does use old-fashioned ASCII encoding of characters for its output, but you could pass wide Unicode strings and characters to printf, and they would get automatically converted into ASCII if your substitution placeholder is %S or %C. This example adds a little bit more control information between the % symbol and the S symbol. The quantity after this dot symbol, which is 2, says to only output the first 2 characters from the string in the corresponding parameter. The quantity before this dot symbol, which is 5, says to pad that output with spaces if needed, so that the output will consume a total of 5 characters. Instead of writing the output string to the standard output stream, you could instead target some variable's string buffer. That variable would get treated kind of like the way our previous video demonstrated how the strcpy function treated its destination string. In particular, this destination variable must have already been allocated to have enough space for all these characters that will now be written to it. This example demonstrates a more modern alternative to sprintf. We still have the concept of substitution placeholders, each corresponding to one parameter, but this time a pair of brace symbols is used instead of a % symbol. And we don't need to specify a type anymore, instead relying upon modern C++'s ability to deduce the type. Also, the output now targets a standard string object instead of targeting a C string. This formatted printing is often the most convenient way to cast from a number into a string, especially because the result can be mixed with other printed characters. Similar to %d, the substitution placeholder types %o and %x both expect their corresponding parameter to be an integer, but %o will format that value as octal. %x will format it as hexadecimal. For hexadecimal digits A through F, they can be formatted using either uppercase or lowercase, depending on the case of the %x. If the corresponding parameter is floating point, then you should use %f or %e if you want it formatted as scientific notation. This time, the optional value after dot symbol will determine its precision, that is, the number of digits outputted after a decimal point. A Win32 function _I2a is dedicated to the task of casting from a number into a C string. This _I2a function appends the null character to its output. The programmer can choose which numeric base that _I2a function should use. Of course, a popular one is decimal, that is base 10. So far, we've seen two different ways that you could convert from number into string, by formatted printing or by a specialized _I2a function. A third way is to call a toString function. It's a common practice for the programmer of a custom class to implement a member function, called toString, which returns a standard string object. This is commonly used to aid debugging, because that returned string could be given some kind of meaningful textualized description of the object's state. C++ lets you pass your custom typed object as a parameter to a global toString function, which is simply a templated wrapper that would then call your toString member function. Of course, a C++ primitive type like int doesn't have any member functions, but you can nonetheless pass an int to the global toString. Doing so causes a simple conversion from number into string. These functions have wide Unicode alternatives.